Hello, everyone. I'm Robyn Grable, the founder of Talents Ascend and the Ascend Collective, and your host for Ascending Beyond Barriers. Welcome. Ascending Beyond Barriers is an inspiring podcast dedicated to showcasing the remarkable journeys of small business founders who have faced and overcome significant challenges on their path to success. Each episode delves into the personal stories of entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds, highlighting their unique experiences, struggles, and triumphs. Hello, today we have Patrick Flood, CEO and founder of Owners in Honor, a 501c3 nonprofit empowering veterans and their spouses to become entrepreneurs through business acquisition. With an MBA from Duke and an MS in defense analysis and over 25 years of leadership as a Green Beret, Patrick is dedicated to creating meaningful impact. Purple Heart and Bronze Star recipient Patrick blends his military honors, global expertise, and passion for positive change to inspire and uplift the veteran community. Patrick, thank you so much for being here today. I just really appreciate you being on, and I can't wait to tell people about Owners in Honor. But let's start with Green Beret. Wow. Sure. Okay. That's not something everyone can accomplish. So let's start there and tell us about your experience as a Green Beret.
As a Green Beret? Well, most of it's classified. Just kidding.
Of course. Yes.
So first off, thank you for having me, Robyn. Secondly, my experience as a Green Beret is even as a Green Beret. So Green Berets conduct unconventional warfare for the most part for the United States military. We are the experts in it. There's other organizations that also do some unconventional warfare as part of their mission, but that's our principal focus. So what's unconventional warfare? It's really a lot of it is partnering with indigenous populations and ensuring that they have security in order to be able to then defend themselves for the most part. So it's a lot of times, it's very much like being a consultant, to be quite frank, except maybe a little bit more dangerous. Sure. They sometimes call us the Peace Corps with guns. We were created the same day by the same guy, by John F. Kennedy. And so a lot of it is really to foster American diplomatic relations, but in a place that's maybe a little bit more not as quite security stable as what the Peace Corps would operate in. And so the main thing that I think I got out of working with the different indigenous populations is really I think underscoring the importance of being curious and being humble in that curiosity. So a great example. So I go to Peru in 2011. I was there for 2.5 years. I was a special operations advisor to our ambassador and the special advisor to their Joint Special Operations Command in Peru. I had spent at that point probably 3 years, maybe a little bit more than that, in Afghanistan and Iraq in combat, which is a principally arid location, sometimes mountainous. And then the Peruvians, on the other hand, were fighting in triple canopy jungle in the Andean mountains.
Wow.
And they've been fighting an organization, insurgent organization called the Sendero Luminoso, or the Shining Path, for almost 20 years, for a little over 20 years at that point. And so the people that I was advising a 4-star Peruvian general, special operations general, who had been fighting the Sendero Luminoso for most of his life. And when I first got there as a young Green Beret major, he basically told me to sit in the corner and color, that I really didn't have anything he thought that could help him. And and so during that time, I just asked a million questions, not to him necessarily, but I asked to his comptroller, I asked to the operations officer, how did they training? I talked a little bit to their intel officer to see how they collected intelligence, not what intelligence they were collecting, but how they did it, how they analyzed it, how they disseminated it, and then how they acted upon it. And then unfortunately, they had a couple of really bad incidents where the head of their helicopter school was killed in an incident by a sniper, Sierra Luminosa sniper. And then I think it's Senegas, which has a large gas and oil platform in Peru, ended up, I think it's Senegas, it might have been Repsol, but they ended up having a couple helicopters burn on the helicopter pads, and a bunch of cell phone tires were blown up by the Sierra Luminosa. When that happened, thankfully I was there and I hadn't bothered them enough to stick around. And they allowed me to then come into the room as they were planning stuff. And then from that point on, it was really me telling them, look, I'm not going to teach you how to fight the Sierra Luminosa. What I'm going to do is I'm going to understand, I'm going to learn and understand and ask questions about how you're doing it. And then I'm going to take an objective view of it, because I'm not here and I haven't been fighting them for 20 years. Right. And I'm going to see if there's any advice that I can provide or connections that I have with potentially other U.S. agencies that then we can collaborate as the U.S. to then provide more combined or collective effort against the insurgent. So what we ended up doing is that the U.S. Embassy together created what essentially was a joint task force. So it was us working with the DEA, us working with the agency, and a couple of other different organizations to work with the partner organizations that we had in the Peruvian government to then make sure that they had radios that could talk to each other, make sure that they had medevac to be able to support people leaving the jungle, because that was the main reason they weren't being super aggressive. And no one knew that because they hadn't stuck around long enough to ask the question. So why aren't they being effective? Well, they're not being effective because they're not aggressive on target. Why aren't they aggressive on target? Well, it's just because they're not as good. Oh, I don't think that's it. Let's ask another why. So because these are, I mean, they're young men and women who are extraordinarily patriotic, who want to keep, who chose this as a career. So you can't just discount it. And so you keep asking questions, and then eventually you uncover the fact, they have fear of personal prosecution because the justice system isn't set up that provides them any security. So the organizations that they work for don't provide them defense. So they're afraid that if they do something wrong, they're going to get personally sued. And then the second part was there's no CASEVAC or medevac facility or capability for them, so that if they get injured or potentially gravely injured, there's no way to extract them, and then they die in the jungle. Yeah. And so understanding all that stuff was not like, that wasn't me wearing black Velcro, coming in the middle of the night, kicking in a door and doing bad things to bad people. That was me understanding logistics and medical support and why people are motivated. And so like, that's the sort of stuff that then, I still, I have close enough relationships with them that I could maintain a security clearance. But I told them I never wanted a building named after me, because that usually means something bad happened. But I'm really proud of the things that they were able to accomplish afterwards. And I think they were very pleased with the fact that Green Berets are quiet professionals, in the sense that the things that we did to help them get better, I didn't go blast on in their press or in our press and saying, hey, we did this. We took credit for it. They stink. We're smarter, blah, blah, blah. You're dumb, I'm smart. Like all the other stuff that is really childish and diplomatically isn't going to get us to where we need to get anyway, because the long stated goal is really for us to create a strategic partnership with those partners and relationships, so that should something go sideways in that part of the world, we have a known partner that we can go in and say, instead of us sending 10,000 Marines here, why don't we send 300 Green Berets who already know these guys? And then from that, we can make sure that their organization is able to be a little bit more successful. And then they feel pride of defending their own territory. We feel pride of being able to help them without having to expend a lot of blood, treasure, and time. And so it's the way that we do things that's a little bit different. And for me, as you could tell, I could probably go on and on for this for hours.
Well, I want to talk about a few things that you said in there, because a couple of things, I don't think enough people understand that the military isn't just about going in and knocking down doors, right? There's so much more the military, that our U.S. military does for our allies and for countries out there, just the way you described. So thank you for bringing that up. But it also segues very well into what you're doing today, because all the things that you described helping them with
That's
are
right.
what business owners have to go through.
That's right.
All of
And
those things, and looking at it from a perspective of, I've been doing this, well, and I'll use myself as an example. I've been running this business for 7 years,
yeah,
and there's things that I'm blinded to because
sure.
I'm so immersed in it and I'm so passionate about what we do that I don't always see that there are better ways of doing things. So tell us
Right.
about Owners in Honor. I know your family history, been entrepreneurs and veterans, 80 years of Army service in your family. My goodness, thank you so much for that. They're
Yeah.
also entrepreneurs and small business owners, so you've grown up in that world.
Mhm.
Tell us about that and then how you got into Owners in Honor.
Sure. Um, so I'm a third generation American. My so during the Irish Civil War, there were actually three sides. My family was on the side that was trying to create a compromise between the two, and so unfortunately, when you're in the compromise and then no one wins, you get thrown out of the country. So we ended up coming to the country. So my great grandfather came with my with his father, and then he was educated. He was the last generation to really be educated at that level. My great grandfather wasn't able to get a formal education beyond high school or
Wow.
beyond grade school. And then my grandfather didn't get an education either. But my grandfather had 9 children
Wow.
and pledged that he would get every single one of them a college education. And so that was part of it. This is my dad's father, and then he and his brother had created a bulk fuel oil distribution company in central Wisconsin called Flood Oil. It still exists in 1932. My grandfather, as the second oldest, though, ended up serving in World War II in the Army Air Corps. Came back out and then continued to operate the business. It's still owned by my cousin at this point. That's a business. And so growing up in that, there was a strong sense of like it's part of my whole family story. And
Yeah.
so being an entrepreneur and being important to a community and being able to, so bulk fuel oil, it's not sexy. It's not, you're not, creating electric vehicles, but you are creating, an ability for farmers and corporations to be able to do their job. And so,
Absolutely.
to be that connected, especially in a place like Wisconsin, where it depends so heavily on farming, and farmers, as you know, are salt of the earth sort of people.
Yeah.
Is that it kind of it fundamentally changes the way that you look at business. I think because
Mhm.
my family had always been involved in it, and you look at it a lot of different ways. One, you have to keep your nose clean a lot because everyone knows who you are.
Right.
Um, and then two is that like people depend on you to be able to create their own livelihoods. And so that's really important. And then my dad later on, bootstrapped himself to college because he was the oldest boy. And he ended up going to the Navy, joined the Navy during Vietnam because he had joined. You're a Navy brat or served in the Navy? Yeah.
I did.
There's nothing wrong with that. I believe in all the services. But it's funny after you go to war with some folks, the parochialism of the different services kind of goes away. Unfortunately, in peacetime, I think because everyone's fighting over budget, it kind of returns. But I mean that's the story for a different day, maybe. But
Right.
the reason I think I was successful as a recruiting battalion commander later on is because I had the fortune of actually serving with my other recruiting commanders that were in the area in Los Angeles in combat. And so we didn't see the mission as we were fighting each other as competitors. We looked at it as a joint mission.
Sure.
And for the first time in the history of LA MEPS, we had all made our mission. So
Nice.
we recruited collectively about 11,000 young men and women out of Los Angeles in 1 year. We ended up as the Los Angeles recruiting battalion. We were the number one recruiting battalion for almost 16 months.
Wow.
Out of 42, and we had never been higher than about 30 in
Wow.
and it's just a matter of
Working together.
understanding what people's values are and seeing if you can create value for them and mutual value and not saying, hey, I'm going to deliver a service whether or not you want it, is to try to figure out, hey, I'm here to deliver a service, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding and I'm listening to you so that I can deliver a service that you want. And because
Yeah.
there's different ways that I can deliver the service. And so at the end of the day, it's all business, right?
Yes.
And so at any rate, my dad then owned a clinic. He started his own clinic, ended up getting a direct commission to the Army after he went to PA school, was a captain in the Army. Most of his time, I think, in the Army was served in the reserves. But he ended up leaving, I think, the service after a collective, I think, 27 years in service. And he ran a clinic in a rural part of Wisconsin that, because of the Rural Health Care Act, he was able to be the principal owner of it,
Nice.
and my mother. And then he employed doctors and nurses and whatever. Part of the story, though, is that he then was purchased, and this is where the story gets maybe a little dark, is that probably one of the principal catalysts for me doing this, really, the more that I've kind of peeled the onion back over time, is that I had a younger brother about 25 years ago commit suicide. And so when my younger brother committed suicide, I was at the time a working actor. So I had been on television, film, soap opera, a couple commercials, was actually working. And when my brother passed away, he had been my closest sibling. And I felt that I felt a call to service at that point, that what I was doing, I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I felt like there was more I could do for others. And so it was 2000. And so I had the opportunity to come back into the active Army. I was in the reserves at the time, came back in the active Army, and then was assigned as a communications officer to a special forces group in January 2001. Had a 1-year contract with the United States Army that I was going to get out of the Army January 15th or January 14th, I guess, 2002. And
Nope.
January 14th, 2002, young Lieutenant Flood was standing on the airfield at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with all of his equipment palletized, about to go to Afghanistan with the advent of my Special Forces Battalion to replace the battalion that was currently engaged in Operation Anaconda. So
Wow.
quite a change of events. And then from that, really had an opportunity of working for some incredible leaders that saw in me, they felt the aptitude of being able to be a Green Beret. So they encouraged me to do that. And they weren't all Green Berets. So also from the signal community where I was working, and that's a whole thing. That's a lot of cocktail talk later on, maybe. But there's
You have so many things we could talk about, Patrick. The actor, all this. Oh my goodness.
some
Keep going.
very interesting, because I was there at OEF1 and OIF1, and it was very much the Wild Wild West when we first went to both places. And so
Sure.
the amount of responsibility that each of us got as individuals, because there weren't that many of us over at the very beginning, was just incredible.
Yeah.
And it was just it was awe-inspiring, the fact that the country and my command would place that much faith in me to be able to do this stuff. And so for me, it seemed like all the parts sort of fit together. And then, I had thought as a working actor that I would participate in this combat thing for about the same time as World War II, probably, 4 years at the most, maybe 5. And I'd go back to Los Angeles and be Jimmy Stewart and have good stories and star in It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. That's right.
And that did not occur. So we stayed in combat, unfortunately, for, a very long period of time, 2 decades beyond that. And so during that time, I really felt the call to continue to serve. I got injured, as you mentioned, the Purple Heart, pretty significantly in 2007. And again, between the organization, Special Operations Command, and actually a nonprofit called the Eagle Fund, was able to go to a inpatient rehabilitation center. And I had broken my neck and was able to rehab completely to the point that I could eventually jump out of airplanes again. So great stuff. But it just further sunk me into the fact that I really felt like I needed to give back. Then eventually I retire. So I commanded a recruiting battalion, had the opportunity to be able to go to the EMBA program or the weekend MBA program at Duke during that time, which was great because I took all of the lessons that I was getting at Duke and applied them directly to my recruiting battalion. Because at the end of the day, recruiting is business. It's just part of business. And so the more I understood it, the more I could talk to Austin Butner, the superintendent of schools for LUSD, the second largest school district in the country, and talked to the mayor, like really like people that, because I was talking to them in value creation terms. I wasn't talking to them in please let us into your schools because I'm the Army. It was that, hey, what do you guys need? And they needed Red Cross training. We had partnerships with the Red Cross. We provided Red Cross training to teachers. We provided these basic training experiences, which were sort of fun for teachers of the schools that wanted to participate. We would like camp essentially on their like football field, bring kids out, have the teachers kind of go through rigmarole of what felt like basic training, and it was actually quite a lot of fun. And so it was hard work because in recruiting, you work 7 days a week. You work holidays because the holidays are the big times to recruit. So it was challenging in that. But then I transitioned out, went through an organization called the Honor Foundation, which is originally founded by the Navy SEAL Foundation. They let a Green Beret slip through. And so they helped me sort of formulate what's my why. What is it that I want to do? And a lot of it was I want to be able to give back to people to create an exponential effect of positive uplift for other individuals. So how can I essentially become a coach or a combat multiplier to other people? And I didn't want to do it as a coach. So taking all of that in the experience at Duke is that I started noticing, after working at Anderson, which is where I was employed, and working a lot in the M&A services and helping grow their M&A services, is that there was a lot of opportunity in the lower middle market, which is small businesses under $5 million. And they were too small for Anderson to pursue, didn't make any financial sense. At the same time, I was working with the Honor Foundation, helping them. And the interest in entrepreneurship had gone up from about 15% of the cohorts to about 40%. Wow. And the principal way that they were being talked to about it, and probably what most people understand about veteran entrepreneurship, is through startup. And so in my eyes, I'm not going to take anything away from any organization that helps people start businesses, because it's a totally different animal and it's extraordinarily hard. And the output of extraordinarily hard is 1 out of 20 businesses typically succeeds or is profitable after 3 to 5 years. And so in my eyes, having gone through my own transition, having kind of put all of my, quote unquote, I love me stuff in a Foot Locker and stuck it in a storage area while I was working in Anderson, I felt, and I think after my brother passed away, psychological counseling became part of my life. And so I think I'm very psychologically sound. And it was difficult for me. And I had an MBA and I, 2 degrees, and I was a Green Beret and all the other stuff. Right. And so I felt if it was difficult for me and I had really a lot of the things laid out for me, and I'm an officer, and it just felt like
and your family had a business background, right? So you had sort of a foundation for that.
And what it came down to is that I felt like there was a connection between especially the non-commissioned officer corps among the cohort that I was working with and their ability to operate businesses. My grandfather had been a non-commissioned officer. My dad had been a non-commissioned officer, and they weren't like, being an officer doesn't make you special. And so I was like, but it seemed like the only people that were getting a chance for entrepreneurship stuff was officers. And so I was like, it really, to me, I was like, I think we're missing a big group of people that could really get some help. But then I started interviewing. I interviewed about 100 special operations non-commissioned officers, because that happens to be my community. It wasn't that I was picking special operators out of someone else. Just easy to get someone on the phone.
Sure.
And so predominantly their main reticence of doing it was lack of understanding, just lack of education. I mean, I could tell you about the myriad of things that equal lack of education, but really it was lack of education. And so it's equated to, in my eyes, is the people that join the military. Over 85% of them have a member of their family 1 or 2 degrees removed to have served in the military. So if you extrapolate that and then you say, okay, who gets involved in entrepreneurship? Well, people that get involved in entrepreneurship, about 3/4 of them have someone who's 1 or 2 degrees removed from them who's an entrepreneur. And so because you have bias to success, you have bias to understanding, you have bias to say, if that schmuck could do it, Uncle so-and-so, then I could do it too. And
Right.
so that's all part of it, right? And the same thing goes with the military. And
Yeah.
if you look at the cohort of people that typically enlist in the military, how many of them are entrepreneurs, their parents, versus how many of them are W-2 employees? Almost all of them are W-2 employees. So what is the likelihood that your average veteran is going to gravitate toward entrepreneurship or have the network to be able to be successful at it? Probably pretty low. And at the same time, they have all of the attributes that would make them successful.
Absolutely.
And the things that even at business school, in the business school, we talk about it all the time, it's hard to teach. And part of the reason that they were so favorable to veterans at Duke is because it's like I had, I don't know, probably 50,000 iterations of leadership by the time I'd showed up. And a lot of the technical experts that had been there to get an MBA to then sort of launch into leadership had maybe only had a couple dozen instances of actually being able to be a leader. Sure. And so and I think because we're blind to the fact that there's an asset to it for those of us who serve in the military, because we just take it for granted. And it's hard to monetize it. It's hard to say, well, my leadership is valued at this, because it is a soft skill. And so from that, but then being able to plug those two things together and say, okay, so what are the three reasons that someone fails in a business acquisition? Reason number one, bad acquisition. So they don't know what they're getting into. They don't know themselves. They don't know what their own financial plan is. They don't understand their own network. They don't understand where they want to live. They don't really understand what kind of business they think they want to run. They don't understand when they start getting the diligence documents, they don't understand how to read a P&L. They don't know the documents to ask for. They don't understand master service agreements and how they're tied to different factors. They don't understand quality of earnings and all that stuff. But there's a lot of stuff biz by sell that you can just go and contact an owner and say, hey, I'm interested in buying your business. And then see if you have capital, you could potentially even buy a business with almost no experience whatsoever at all.
Wow.
And then, what's your likelihood of being able to create revenue? It's difficult, right? Yeah. So that's one. So then the second part is, okay, now I've owned the business. Now what's the second reason that I fail at the business is because of lack of experience. And what does lack of experience really mean? Lack of experience really means it's the opportunity cost of identifying a problem in a timely manner, being able to find a solution and have the solution provide a result in a manner that creates a cost benefit to the business. So does that mean that somebody who doesn't have experience running a plumbing company, who's running a plumbing company, is never going to see a problem? No, they may actually see the problem. But now they've identified the problem. It's probably taken them twice as long to identify the problem. Now they have, take it in time, right? So it's taken them 6 months to identify the problem. Now it takes 6 months for them to talk to whoever they know to see if they can find someone to solve the problem. Then it takes 6 months to figure out if the person that they brought in to solve the problem is even worth their snuff.
Right.
So
meanwhile, they run out of money and
18 months of opportunity cost of revenue going out the window.
Yeah.
And now you've lost the bubble. And if you're considering a success rate being measured on 3 to 5 years, boom, you're not profitable at year 3. Therefore, you're not successful. Therefore, you're 2 out of the 3 businesses that don't work out. The third reason is personal issues. Yeah. So personal issues, what does that mean? Does my family agree that this is what we're doing? Because when you own a small business, the ability to compartmentalize what you do for a living and what you do personally is negated. Yeah. And so is everyone on board? Is my spouse on board? Are my children on board? Do they understand what's going on? Have I connected to a community? Who is my community now? So typical small business owners are islands unto themselves. And a lot of times they view everything as competition. So they're competing against everyone for everything. And the reason that there's a lot of monetization of networking is because they're trying to mitigate that, right? So for us is that we provide so you come to us, first we have an interview with you. We determine whether or not entrepreneurship through acquisition is even right for you. If there's a different type of entrepreneurship that you're interested in, then we have referral partners. We get you to the right place. The second thing that we do is that then we put you in what we're calling a base camp. And now you're in the base camp for as long as you need to be. So really that's continual learning, webinars, being able to engage other people in your cohort, because the experience there you're having is that, like in the last 6 months, we brought in 130 people. We bring in about 15, 20 people at a time.
Nice.
So those 15, 20 people didn't realize that anybody else was looking. And now they're meeting all of these other people that are in their cohort that are also looking, and now they don't feel so alone.
Sure.
And now they can group solve problems too, because they're on a Slack channel, they all talk to each other.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then it lessens the cost of essentially consulting at that point, because they're already refining a question before it gets to you.
Yeah.
Then if it can't be answered in the group, then it comes to the subject matter experts, which are us, and then we help them.
Nice.
Then they determine what's their buy box. So we help them understand what's their timeline to being able to operate a business. We request that they're able to operate a business in 90 days before they put in an application and start searching. So that's one. So the second one is, what is their financial baseline and what is their financial aspiration? So how much money do you need to make ends meet? And then what's your financial aspiration? And there's no wrong answers to either one.
Sure.
And then the third one is, what's your geography? So we're, unlike most transition organizations that are really corporate placement, sort of corporate search engines, is that what we are is to say, hey, if you want to move to East Tennessee, that actually makes it easier for us, because then we're going to connect the brokers and businesses in East Tennessee, and we're going to look, an hour plus, whatever that center point is, to be able to help you find the business. It actually makes life a lot easier for us than us try to scope 6 million businesses and then try to figure out which one's right for you and then have you move there.
Yeah.
And then the benefit to that is also, now you can say, hey, my spouse always wanted to move back, or my mother or father, so my kids' grandparents rather, are in this locale. We all know that being engaged back into family is a big mitigating factor to psychological distress.
Yeah.
So if we can plug people back into where they actually want to go, not where the job is, but where we can make the job where they want to go instead, then we've mitigated, I think, some of the psychological distress that they could potentially go through.
Sure.
Then the other one is, can I or can I not get an SBA loan? So does that mean you have to use an SBA loan to finance your business? No. What it does is it provides us, because the SBA is pretty conservative in how they value risk, is that it allows us to see, hey, you've talked to an SBA loan advisor, here are the flags that you're probably not going to get a loan. So fix the flags. So we're not telling you no, we're just saying not right now. And then go fix these flags.
Nice.
And then, was that all 4 of them? So, and then what is your personal financial plan? So what, if you, as an example, 10 years from now were to make X number of dollars, what would you do? And if you make that in 5 years instead of 10 years, what would you do? So now you answer those 4 questions, which then helps a broker help you find a business, helps us connect with whether it's a private equity firm that's providing us deal flow or whatever, stuff that's too small for them. But it helps us to say, okay, you're looking specifically in the Columbus, Ohio area. We have these many brokers and businesses in this area. We know generally what you're looking for. We know how much money you need to make. And we know more or less what the type of business you're able to run. And then from that, then now we help them, and they enter into really the next part of it, which is where we help them operate, do the mitigation of the acquisition. So then we bring them in, help them do diligence services, so they make sure that they're not buying something that's not worth what they're paying for it.
Yep.
And then after that, they go into how do we mitigate their lack of experience? So we mitigate their lack of experience by giving them a small business advisor who then is partnered with allied service providers. So allied service providers could be anything from corporate insurance to corporate benefits to marketing to CPA, fractional CFO, whatever. So that small business advisor is able to then reach into a vetted group of people and say, this is the thing you need to fix this thing. Mm-hmm. Here's the cost benefit analysis of using it. Here is what the output should be. Now let's backwards plan and utilize that vetted service provider, who then is providing exclusive discounts to only people in our program. Nice. And then for us, it's that we want them to provide the exclusive discount for at least 1 year. And that's the agreement we have with all of our allied service partners. And then from that, it's really up to the veteran who owns the business now and the allied service provider if they continue to do that. If not, they can always come back to us for another referral if that doesn't work out. But then we would then reevaluate whether or not the vetted service provider is the right service provider, even in our network. If they can't perform the duty that they said they were going to do, then they could potentially get bounced, and then we find someone new. And then lastly is that we connect them to exit planners that then ensure that they're able to provide or build an exit plan, a 10-year exit plan, even if they don't plan to exit at 10 years. So it's so they understand, hey, every 3 years, we're going to evaluate the exit opportunity for this. We're going to get the employees comfortable with the fact that there's probably going to be a succession. And that doesn't need, and ideally, the sooner we start planning for that, the more likely it's going to be a positive succession. Ideally, in a perfect world, would be to another veteran. So 10 years, you sell that business to another veteran. Ideally, the business is more valuable. So maybe you're going to have a capital partner at that point to be able to afford to buy the business. But at the same time, ideally, you keep what would have been a family generational business, bloodline generational business, you turn it into a veteran generational business. So families only have, let's say, using my dad's family, 9 kids. That's a lot of kids. And it's not the national average anymore. And so the likelihood of someone finding a family, member to be able to take over a business gets less and less as you have fewer family members.
Sure.
However, the United States military has 200,000 people separate every year, or a little bit more than that. And so based on that number, I'm willing to bet that we could probably have a better chance than a typical family that has 2.2 kids to be able to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So many things in there. I think one, the SBA part of it, one of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur is that you have to establish a funding resource and source before you need the money.
That's right.
And if you don't do that, you're not going to get money. Don't wait until you're out of money to try to get money. Wrong there. So, and then to have all those resources is really important. And the matchmaking sort of part of it is really near and dear to my heart, because that's what we do for veterans, military spouses who want to go into careers, take their skills and and match them to great careers. So, wow. Well, we're a little over our time. We could talk lots more, but I want to just close this out with, so what would your best advice be to somebody who's thinking about being an entrepreneur, or someone who's struggling in their business now? What would you tell them?
If you're a veteran, come and ask us for help. And there's ways that we can help you that are either low cost or no cost.
Awesome.
And the goal would be really for us is that we want to be able to help stem the tide a little bit of the predatory aspect of some of the acquisitions that are happening right now due to the gray wave or silver tsunami, and provide opportunity to more veterans. And so for us, it's that we believe that there's going to be an exponential effect. The goal really for every veteran who then buys and sells a business is that they become a mentor for the next veteran. Because for us, veterans, we find a great deal of satisfaction, and something that's missing a lot of times when we leave the service is our ability to groom a successor. And it's been part of our life's blood since we first entered the service. We are never just responsible for ourselves. We're always responsible, at least for another teammate. Right. And a lot of times when you go into the corporate world, that kind of doesn't exist anymore. So this provides someone who is potentially, maybe they have created a little private wealth. Maybe they've been successful, but they don't want to completely retire. Then they can be a capital provider and an active investor for another veteran and be able to help that guy up, or they could just be a mentor, either one. And so it keeps that life's blood keep going for something that really is a learned skill, but has become a habit for most of us that is missing a lot of times once we leave the service.
Well, it's that sense of purpose, because you go into the military probably because you want to have something bigger than yourself. I know that was for me when I joined the Navy. But then when I put that uniform on, and that, I mean, it's just bigger than life, right? And when you take that uniform off, you lose that sense of purpose. And that's truly why we also work with small businesses and helping veterans and military spouses have careers in small businesses, because you can have that sense of purpose again and be part of that community. So, well, Patrick, thank you so much wow, what a great story. We're definitely going to have you come back. We've got lots more to talk about, but thank you for all you're doing. Great just wonderful things with Owners in Honor. Just looking forward to your success. But thanks for being on today, and thanks for all you're doing.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, Robyn, and I appreciate all you're doing for veterans and veteran families as well. So
Thank you.
it's good. It's been nice. I'll leave with this. I think since starting this, I would say that there was kind of an absence of service, maybe for a couple of years, and we've just in engaging the community again and having candid conversations with people that appreciate candor has just been. It has filled my cup like I had not expected, and the fact that when you do believe in something and you lead with, I think, your heart, and you start attracting and also repelling people, and I'm fine with that. So initially, I think it was that you're trying to be everything to everyone because you're doing something new, and then it gets down to the fact of no, I just need to find my tribe again.
Yes, 1,000%.
Yeah, so I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Robyn.
Thank you.
Take care.